Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. You ever have a moment so sharp, so surgically precise in its pain, that it slices straight through confusion and lands in clarity? It was 6:42 p.m. She stood in front of me with a weekend bag on her shoulder and a carefully rehearsed calm in her voice. Brooke always spoke softly when she was about to wreck something. "I just need some time, Nate," she said. 30 days. To think. To figure things out. I need to see if this thing with Jordan is real, or if it's just distraction. Not cheating, not betrayal. Just a distraction. Her words were smoothed out, sanitized, like she'd Googled how to say them without sounding like the villain. I didn't scream. Didn't ask questions. Didn't cry. I nodded. Okay. That was it. No dramatic exit. No throne ring. Just a quiet acknowledgement that she had already made her decision, and she just wanted me to agree to the terms. But what she didn't know was, so had I. That night, she left, pulled out of the driveway like someone heading off to a yoga retreat, not walking out on 8 years of marriage. I stood at the kitchen window and watched her tail lights vanish into the dark. And in that moment, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt released, because I knew Brooke wasn't coming back undecided. She was testing the waters, seeing if the grass was greener, while keeping the gate open behind her. She wanted freedom with a fallback. I wasn't going to be that fallback. She had 30 days, but I'd only need 3. That first night alone, I didn't pour a drink. I didn't call my brother or text my best friend. I did something else entirely. I opened a folder on my laptop I hadn't touched in years, the one labeled before Brooke. Old gym plans, business ideas, unsent drafts of short stories, photos with people I hadn't seen since our wedding, the man I used to be. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't miss her. I missed him. By the second night, I was clearing drawers. Not angrily, methodically. A toothbrush here, her scarves, her books that never made it past chapter 3. Each item went into a box labeled with her name. Not as a threat, as a boundary. I changed my passwords, split the bank accounts, locked the shared credit card. She said she'd decide later, but I already had. The third night, I slept better than I had in months. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean. It was mine. And just before falling asleep, I did something unexpected. I deleted the photo of our wedding from my phone's home screen. Not out of spite, out of respect. Because if she was chasing clarity, I'd meet her there, just 10 steps ahead. 3 days. That's how long it took for her silence to crack. It came in as a simple text, around 9:13 p.m. I was sitting on the patio, laptop open, halfway through sketching out a logo idea for a small business I never thought I'd actually launch, until now. "Hope you're doing okay." No emojis. No punctuation. Just 5 empty words tossed into the void like a net she half-hoped would catch me still waiting. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, but because by the time she decided to check in, I had already checked out. Brooke was always the type who thought she could read people, manipulate tension like a string instrument, tug a little here, release there. She assumed silence meant anticipation, that I was pacing the house, hoping she'd come to her senses. She didn't understand that some men don't wait. They detach. The next morning, I woke up early and hit the gym. Not because I was chasing some kind of post-breakup transformation, but because for the first time in years, I was training for me. For my discipline. My clarity. My phone buzzed again around lunch. Another message. "Thinking of you." This one had a heart at the end. I let it sit on the screen for a minute. Not out of sentimentality, but to feel the shift, how her words, which once had the power to disarm me, now felt like background noise. I archived the message. Didn't delete it. Didn't respond. Just removed it from sight, like you'd move a chair out of the hallway. Something once useful that now just blocks your path. By day 5, she started sending photos. The cat curled up on the couch. A photo of the sunset from her new apartment. Familiar angles. Familiar filters. Like she was trying to stitch me back into a routine that no longer included her. She didn't understand that I wasn't just moving on. I was moving out of the version of me she thought would always be there. That night, I made dinner for one. Steak, asparagus, a glass of red. I sat down, played jazz, lit a candle, not for romance, but for ritual. And it hit me. I didn't feel lonely. I felt clean. This wasn't about revenge or proving anything. This was about finally realizing that love, real love, doesn't ask you to be a backup plan. So I set my phone down, face down, silent, and I ate in peace. Because Brooke hadn't just left for 30 days. She'd stepped out of her role in my life. And while she was deciding if her fling was worth it, I was building a life she'd never be invited back into. Day 8. By then, I'd stopped counting how long she'd been gone. I had mentally deleted the calendar she tried to place over my life. 30 days of limbo, where I was expected to freeze in place while she played house with someone else. But that morning, something cracked. And it didn't come from her. It came from Ashley, Brooke's closest friend. The one who always smiled too wide when I entered a room and talked too fast when conversations veered into uncomfortable territory. The kind of person who could keep a secret, but not very well. I was at the grocery store. Random run. Coffee, protein bars, and some cleaning supplies. I turned into aisle 7 and nearly walked into her. She froze for half a second. Not guilt, just recognition, like seeing a ghost she didn't expect to meet during daylight hours. She gave me that polite, forced smile and a quick, "Hey, Nate," before pretending to examine a box of quinoa. I nodded and kept walking. Didn't know her small talk. But the moment I turned the corner, I heard it. Her voice, low and rushed. On a phone call she must have forgotten to hang up. "He's here." "Yeah, aisle 7. No, he looks fine. Just, I don't think he knows." I stopped walking. Eyes locked on a shelf of dish soap I wasn't planning to buy. "I don't think he knows she moved her stuff out for good." "No, not just clothes. Like, everything. Drawer stuff. Bathroom. Gone." The words hit me like ice down the spine. Not because of what she said, but because of what it confirmed. This wasn't a trial. This was an exit dressed like a timeout. I stood there a second longer. Let it all settle. Then I grabbed a bottle of cleaner, tossed it in my cart, and walked past Ashley like I'd never heard a thing. Because now I knew. Brooke wasn't confused. She wasn't lost. She was gone. And all that messaging, the texts, the nostalgia photos, they weren't about reconnecting. They were pre-guilt, pre-damage control, a way to blur the narrative before she officially let the curtain drop. That night, I didn't rage. I didn't confront. I reorganized my files, cleaned out the last shared folders we had on the cloud, transferred everything relevant into a private archive. Financials, documents, even the photos I had once thought were untouchable. Gone. Locked. Mine. I wasn't reacting. I was preparing, because she thought I was still frozen, waiting for her verdict. But Brooke didn't realize the trial was never hers to conduct. It was mine, and it had just concluded. Day 12. That's when the knock came. It was a Saturday afternoon. Quiet. The kind of day where you forget time exists. I'd just come back from a run, sweat still clinging to my back, music still playing low in my ears. I opened the fridge, grabbed a water bottle, twisted the cap. Then I heard it, 2 short knocks at the front door. My stomach didn't drop. My heart didn't race. I already knew. I took my time walking over. Didn't rush. Didn't check through the peephole. Just opened the door like a man who owned the space behind it. There she was, Brooke, standing on the welcome mat like it was still hers. No suitcase. No duffel. Just her, in a denim jacket, holding a reusable coffee cup like this was some casual visit between friends. Like she hadn't disappeared under the label of self-reflection. She smiled. Not wide. Testing the water. Said she was in the area, and figured she'd stop by to grab a few things she forgot. Something about a necklace, a book, a hoodie she missed sleeping in. Then she reached for the doorknob. But the key didn't work. I watched her twist it twice before pausing, confused. She glanced at me, smile thinning. "When did you change the locks?" she asked. I shrugged. Didn't answer. Just held the door frame with one hand and sipped from my water bottle with the other. Calm. Present. Silent. She looked down, then back up. Her voice dropped half a register, low enough to sound hurt, high enough to fish for sympathy. "You said we'd have time. You said I could think." I nodded. And I did. She didn't expect that. Not the agreement. Not the stillness. She asked if I'd at least let her in for a minute. 5 minutes. Said she just wanted to talk. To explain. I said I wasn't interested in explanations. Not anymore. Because I wasn't the man she left behind. She stepped back, blinking. Like someone who'd knocked on the wrong door and couldn't understand why a stranger answered. I closed it slowly. No slamming. No final word. Just the quiet sound of a new chapter sealing shut. Behind it, I leaned against the wall. Not to collect myself, but to acknowledge something important. She had tried to return to the same house, but I'd already rebuilt the man who lived in it. And he didn't leave the door open for ghosts. By day 15, the tone had changed. The sweet, distant check-ins, the just thinking of you texts, were gone. Replaced by longer messages with anxious undercurrents she couldn't quite hide. It started with one line. "Can we talk? Please?" I read it while standing in line at the bank, waiting to finalize the shift into a solo account. Her name lit up the screen, but it didn't spark anything in me. No ache. No flicker of temptation. Just a reminder of how fast a voice can shift when the silence gets heavy enough. I didn't respond. The next day, she sent a paragraph. Said she felt lost, that this wasn't what she'd expected. Claimed she missed the routines, the way I used to put her mug on the counter before she woke up. She missed the way I remembered the little things, her car's oil change, her favorite wine, her allergy meds during spring. Suddenly, those invisible acts weren't so invisible anymore. But I didn't reply to that either, because I knew what she was trying to do. She wasn't apologizing. She was circling, trying to see if the door she found locked would open if she knocked louder, if she cried longer, if she said the right words. On day 17, the messages started stacking up. "I need to see you. This isn't how it was supposed to go. You said we'd figure things out together. Are you with someone?" That last one sat there the longest. She wanted to provoke something. Jealousy. Pain. Anything to make sure she still mattered. Even in conflict. But I didn't give her that. Because you can't hurt someone who already let go. I muted her number. Not blocked. Just silenced. Let the noise drift into the background where it belonged. I spent that evening boxing up the last of her belongings. Not angrily. Just precise. Measured. A hoodie. A pair of boots. The coffee grinder she loved. All of it folded and placed in a box by the door. No ceremony. And on top of it all, I laid one final item. A copy of the key she tried to use. Not as an invitation. As a conclusion. The next morning, I left the box with the concierge at her apartment complex. No note. No call. Just a tracking number and a signature. She'd know what it meant. Because by then, even she couldn't pretend this was just space. It was a full evacuation. And I hadn't just moved on. I'd moved beyond her. Day 19. The text came in around 2:37 p.m. I was on my lunch break, sitting in the back corner of a small deli downtown, flipping through a notebook full of plans I hadn't made space for in years. Then the message popped up. "Isn't this your wife?" Attached, a photo. It was from Dylan, friend from college. Not someone who knew everything, but close enough to know what she looked like. I opened the image. A cafe. Sunlight pouring through the windows. Brooke, sitting across from a man I'd never seen up close, but immediately knew. Jordan. Same guy from the background of her social media 3 months ago. The coworker who always seemed to comment on her posts with little inside jokes. The one she never mentioned by name, but always too defensively brushed off when I asked. In the photo, her hand was on the table. His was covering it. They were both laughing. But what struck me most wasn't the contact, or even the smile on her face. It was how natural she looked. Like she hadn't burned a bridge. Like there wasn't anything behind her to look back at. I stared at the image for a full minute. No anger. No betrayal. Just understanding. She had moved on before she ever left the house. This month wasn't about clarity. It was about transition. She hadn't taken time to decide. She had taken time to soften the impact. To rewrite the ending. Make it look mutual. Peaceful. Clean. I didn't reply to Dylan. Just closed the message and went back to my sandwich. Every bite tasted better than it should have. Because that was the moment it clicked. This wasn't a tragedy. It was a correction. I finished lunch, walked out into the sunlight, and felt something lift. Not a weight. Not a burden. Just a version of myself that no longer needed to keep checking the rearview mirror. That evening, I opened a folder on my laptop called Legal. Inside were blank divorce papers I'd downloaded weeks earlier. Prepared. And used. Until now. I filled them out in one sitting. No lawyer. No threats. No letters. Just facts. Clean and final. Then I booked an appointment at a notary the next morning. Not out of spite. Not out of revenge. Out of peace. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to fight for answers. It's to stop asking questions. And when I sealed the envelope, I realized something even sharper than pain. She didn't break me. She freed me. Day 23. I didn't want it to be dramatic. No confrontation. No scene. No shouting across a parking lot. Just a clean handoff. A document that didn't ask for a conversation. It simply declared a decision. But timing? That, I considered carefully. Brooke had always been about presentation. The curated life. Polished smiles, perfect captions, strategic vulnerability for likes and sympathy. I knew how much she valued appearances. So I waited. I waited until the Saturday she was scheduled to co-host a local Women in Business networking brunch. She posted about it all week, talked about growth, new chapters, and healing. Her way of narrating the story before anyone else could. I contacted the venue. Had a courier deliver the envelope with my signature. Addressed to her. She would receive it right at check-in, neatly dressed, likely surrounded by peers, perhaps even with Jordan a few steps away. The courier didn't know the contents, just followed instructions. I got the notification of delivery at 10:12 a.m. By 10:27, I received a message from her. Just a photo. The envelope, torn open, sitting on her lap. Her legs crossed, the hem of her dress pulled taut in the edge of the frame. No caption. 2 minutes later, "What the hell is this?" I didn't reply. Then another. "You blindsided me." That one made me pause. Not because it hurt, but because it revealed everything. Brooke never expected consequences. She expected tears. She expected patience. She expected, if not my forgiveness, then at least my availability. She never imagined I'd act. But I had. Quietly. Permanently. That afternoon, I went for a long drive upstate. No destination. Just music, windows down, and the sharp relief of finality. There was no rage in my chest. No ache. Only space. Space she used to take up. Space I had given back to myself. By evening, I'd blocked her number. Not out of bitterness, but because the story was closed. She could keep her brunch speeches, her filtered smiles, her hand on another man's arm. I had my signature, my freedom, and my silence. And that silence? It was no longer a wall. It was a door, and I had already walked through it. Day 27. 3 days before the end of her so-called trial. I wasn't counting, but I remembered. Not for her return, for the closure. Quietly, I'd already planned to take a solo weekend trip on day 30. Not to escape, but to mark the line. The moment the wait officially ended, even if I hadn't been waiting for weeks. That morning, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. My circle had grown smaller since Brooke left, tighter, quieter. The kind of circle that doesn't drop by unannounced. So when I looked through the camera feed and saw her standing there, I didn't flinch. Same denim jacket. Same forced calm in her posture. But something in her eyes was new. Uncertainty. She knocked once more. Then stood there, looking at her reflection in the glass, like she was rehearsing a script. Her hand hovered over her hair, fixing strands that didn't need fixing. The performance was already unraveling. I opened the door halfway. Didn't invite her in. She blinked. "You blocked me," she said. I nodded. She said she needed to say a few things face to face. Something about honesty, about how she didn't know what she wanted when she left. That she had felt pressured by everyone. Me, him, life. I didn't speak. Just let her fill the space with words she hadn't rehearsed well enough. Then she stopped. Looked past me. Into the house. She saw the changes. The art on the walls she didn't recognize. The books stacked on the hallway table. Ones I never had time for when we were together. The weight bench by the window. The sleek black couch that had replaced the worn one she picked years ago. She scanned the room like she was walking through a stranger's Airbnb. Because in many ways, she was. She asked if I was seeing someone. I shook my head. Not because I wasn't, but because the answer didn't matter. Not to her. Not anymore. She looked down. Said something about regret. About how she thought she'd have time. Then she asked the question she should have never asked. "Do you think we could still fix this?" I looked at her. Not with anger. Not even with pity. Just quiet clarity. "I don't live there anymore," I said. She tilted her head, confused. "Live where?" "In the version of me who waited." That was it. No long speech. No need to hurt her. Because the silence between us already said enough. I closed the door. This time, she didn't knock again. Day 30. The day she said she'd make her decision. I marked it only because it mattered to her. To me, it was just a Tuesday. I went to the gym, picked up dry cleaning, read 2 chapters of a book I used to keep on a shelf just to impress guests. My life moved forward, in clean, deliberate steps. But that evening, a text came. Not from her. From a mutual friend. Someone who'd been neutral through the fallout. Never took sides. Never asked questions. Just watched from a distance. The message read, "You probably don't care, but she's not doing great." I didn't answer right away, but I kept reading. Turns out things with Jordan weren't going as planned. Not shocking. The new chapter she'd romanticized had become a cycle of fights, inconsistency, and quiet withdrawal. He wasn't the savior she thought. Just a man who enjoyed being chosen, until he realized she came with baggage. Apparently, he backed off slowly. Less contact. Fewer sleepovers. More missed calls. She'd started showing up late to work. Told people she was just adjusting. But the cracks were visible. Distracted. Irritable. Unfocused. She told a coworker she missed the stability she used to have. Not the love. Not the connection. The stability. That word said everything. It wasn't me she missed. It was the structure I'd built around her. The invisible foundation she never had to pour herself. And now that it was gone, she was discovering what real independence felt like. It was loud. Cold. Unfiltered. I didn't smile reading that message. Didn't feel vindicated. I just felt distance. The kind that can't be crossed anymore. I had a different night planned. Dinner with new faces. A meetup for creatives and small business owners. I'd started designing again, logos, branding, packaging. The kind of work I used to sketch in notebooks back when life still had room for dreams. One of the women there, Cassie, introduced herself after a panel. Asked about my portfolio. We talked for 40 minutes without once bringing up our pasts. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't a replacement. It was a signal. I was already living a life she couldn't step into anymore. Not because I closed the door, but because she no longer fit the architecture. Back home, I glanced at her last message, still unread. Still marked, delivered. And I realized something. You don't always get the satisfaction of watching someone fall apart. But you do get the peace of knowing you didn't go down with them. Day 32. Technically, the trial was over. But by now, that word felt like a bad joke. The real trial had ended the night she left. The rest was just waiting for her to catch up. It was late. Nearly midnight. I'd just gotten home from a dinner with a few people I'd met through the design group. Not friends yet, but people who made me laugh without effort. No history. No weight. Just presence. I took a shower, walked barefoot through the quiet of my apartment, made a cup of tea, and sat in the chair by the window. That's when the message came in. Her name still showed on my screen. Unblocked, untouched. Not out of mercy, but because I didn't need filters anymore. I made a mistake. For words. No greeting. No punctuation. Then another followed. I thought I needed space. I was wrong. I let the phone rest on the arm of the chair. Didn't open the thread. Just watched as the preview sat there glowing against the dark. I knew that tone. The pause between the sentences. The restrained regret. Not quite an apology, not quite surrender. Just enough pain to signal she was hurting, but not enough to admit why. And deep down, she wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She was reaching because she realized I'd stopped orbiting her. That silence she once weaponized, I now wore like armor. She thought distance would make me desperate. Instead, it made me clean. I stared at the message for a while. Not to interpret it. Not to overanalyze. Just to remember what that version of my life sounded like. The static hum of half-love, of convenience mistaken for connection. Then I hit, mark as read. Didn't reply. Didn't delete. Just let it sit there, the digital echo of a door that had already closed weeks ago. Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, another window flicked off. The world kept moving. So did I. I finished my tea, turned off the lights, and let the night settle around me. No speeches. No revenge. No victory lap. Just peace. She wanted to decide later. But I had already decided. And she didn't lose me in an argument. She lost me in the silence she taught me to live in. She wanted clarity. I gave her the quiet kind. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.